Welcome to Buying and Beyond, the buying podcast that aims to entertain and inspire. We're Kate and Linz, and together we have over 30 years' experience in retail, including Accessorise and M&S to name a few high street names.
We've been through the highs and the lows, the ups and the downs of fashion retail buying and beyond, and we really want to share this with you.
This is a safe space for us to share our stories, tips and advice, and we have some friends joining us along the way to give us their thoughts and opinions too.
We hope this podcast will help anyone looking to get into the industry, as well as those already enjoying the wild world of retail buying, as many of these stories will hopefully feel very relatable. So grab your drink of choice, sit back and have a giggle with us. Hi everyone, welcome back for episode 4.
Hi. So today we're going to delve a little bit deeper into that buying role. So we're going to talk about different types of buying, and it can be called like multiple things in sort of different companies, can't it? So own brand, product development, white label, branded buying, multiple words, right?
Yeah.
And quite a few companies are often like a mix of the two. So we're going to give you a quick introduction to designers and merchandisers as we talk through this. It's going to be from our point of view, and it's going to be really brief.
We say that now.
We'll try and keep it brief. But we have got some friends that we'd love to join us in the next series to give us a bit more detail around actually design and merchandising role, because I think they'll do it
They'll do it much more justice than we will, 100%. Yeah, we'll probably just skim and then leave out the best bits of their role. So yeah,
and leave it ready for them. They can take the stage.
Yeah. So we're happy to share our stage.
Yeah, we both started working for a very, very design-led company.
Yeah.
It had an in-house design team. Product development was like integral to the brand handwriting. Like not all companies like that.
No, it kind of sets you on a certain path, doesn't it? I think, you know, when you start in a real product development, own brand role.
It can be a really different skill set, which we'll kind of like talk through. But both of us definitely have a real passion for product development, because that's kind of where we started. And we also started in, like, I think we've mentioned before, but quite a traditional structure. Yeah. And many high street retailers kind of have that, where you've got the buying and the merch teams and they mirror each other. Lots of companies have different variations on this, and definitely like branded buying can have a different structure. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute. But ultimately, in any structure, buyers are responsible for everything.
Absolutely everything.
And it's not necessarily like a big-headed thing, because your head is on the line, you know? So you get to like lead the team, but it can feel like a lot of pressure, like wrong print, it's the buyer's fault, like too much stock,
it's the buyer's fault.
Generally not selling, or selling too quickly, like, you know, it's your responsibility.
You have to react to every scenario.
You do, and you need to have quite a strong character, right?
Oh gosh, yes. I think we should do a whole episode on that.
How do you develop a thick skin?
Yes, exactly. How do you gain the confidence to be able to take on all the different challenges that you face in every scenario possible, and still walk out the door with a smile on your face,
your head held high. But it's definitely something you have to develop. Like you don't be put off, because you can learn these skills. Like, you know, I think it is important to remember that you'll develop through your career, and it's not just hard skills such as like task based, but like also soft skills. So like, how do you work with people, and it takes all sorts, right? Like I think it's important to have a well-rounded team. Like if you think of the colour chart,
and Kate loves her colour chart.
The colour chart.
It's such an interesting concept.
It is, isn't it? And it's interesting because you can get lots of different mixes of personalities, and it's funny to see how those like traits can like work together and against each other. And you've just got to remember that with every positive, there's a negative, without sounding too negative. With every pro, there's a con. But you know,
sweep it on the other way around. With every negative, there's a positive.
Yes, yeah. Start it that way. I like that. End on a positive. And and you do, like, but I guess if you typically thought of a colour chart, you know, you'd say buyers are red, strong-willed, leaders, competitive.
Definitely what our merchandising teams would say.
You'd say merchandisers are probably more blue because you need to be more analytical, a bit more in the numbers. You probably say marketing are very yellow, very ideas. And then you probably say HR are green, they're your people team. But like that's generalising so much and being so stereotypical. And I would say a buyer needs a bit of all of it. Because as a buyer, you need to be headstrong to negotiate, so you need that red. But you do need to be analytical when it comes to sales performance. You can't just rely on your merchandisers.
No.
You do need to be creative. So yes, you've got a design team often, but coming up with those ideas and concepts yourself.
It's more of the concept is in the execution rather than the actual product development. You know, you need to come up with those ideas.
Yeah.
Like what's this all going to sit with? It's all very well, you know, a designer coming up with an amazing shoe, but how's it going to sit in the store?
How's that actually going to translate?
Like, how are we going to package that up? What does that, you know, what's the full range with it? Like, does it have some friends, you know?
How can you make it appeal to the customer? And also finding solutions. Like you have to be creative.
So solution orientated.
Yeah. You have
I'm
to
always
come up
saying
with them.
That. Like we are the problem solving team.
Yeah.
You know?
We are. And so when you think of creativity, it isn't just about something beautiful. It's also actually about finding a solution too. And I think, again, like this is a huge topic, but like people management and also building suppliers relationships. Like, and also building relationships with your suppliers. Like you need to have that element of green. You need to be, you know, understanding of situations.
Definitely.
And you need to be able to change your communication style depending on who you're working with,
especially with suppliers, because they all have such different communication styles, and you need to be able to, you know, you need different suppliers for different things, and so you can't just go with one supplier for everything. They need to be bringing something different to the table to the other supplier, and the way they all work can be completely different. So you're right, you need that adaptability.
Yeah. You need to be able to flex, you need to be able to pivot.
Pivot. Just reminds me of that Friends episode.
I think it does with everyone, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's never gonna die. Like that's gonna stay
brilliant.
with everybody forever. Okay, so brief intro, but let's get into like the nitty gritty. Right, so as we've said, we've predominantly been own brand buyers, or as we like to call it, product development buyers, which is different from somebody who is a product developer.
Yes.
But let's start with that. Do you want to just
should maybe look at what those two things are? So product developer is more on the design side, but a product development buyer is what we have been
doing. Yeah. So you'd start, I mean, you come completely from scratch, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you'll often work with design team, and that could be in-house, or that could be someone who works for your supplier. Sometimes you just work direct with a factory.
Yeah.
Sometimes the designs can be questionable.
Yeah.
But as long as you've got going back to the relationship, a good relationship with them, and strong design briefs.
Yeah. I think when you start out in product development buying, you get to recognise which ranges of your product category really require a design resource, and which product categories you can just go to a factory for, and you know, you often just pick something off what we call off the shelf. So there might be an item that they've already got in their showrooms, and then you change it. You change the colour. You change the, I'm thinking of jewellery here, I don't know why.
Like the material, the finish.
You change the chain, you might change the plate colour, and then you might sort of say, I want to add this stone on, da, 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 da. So you can be quite specific with your factory to do that, to achieve that. However, where you need the design resource is more when you're sort of developing prints and you're developing a bigger
or a
range.
Concept completely afresh.
Yeah.
Something that actually you can't take from you can't take a base and manipulate it to become bespoke. You actually just need to start right from the beginning. And I think design briefs, having a strong design brief is so important.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sure there's going to be like multiple sampling mishaps that people will have had. I mean, one of my favourite parts of product development is working with the design team. Yeah. But oh my God, the sampling mishaps. Like, I have had so many awkward times when a sample hasn't come back as expected. And like, I think we've gathered just a few from some friends actually to like have a bit of a laugh and to get it off their chest. So I know it's quite early on, but shall we have a bit of retail therapy?
Let's do it.
So there's actually quite a few here. I'm not going to count how many, like we'll just go with them. So the counting sheep pyjamas that were missing the O in the stock that was delivered to an all-store Christmas best-selling line. Can use your imagination on that one.
How did that even get into the store?
How did it not get picked up at QC?
Or on the Daily Mail, you know? My God, that's hilarious. Right, we're tag teaming here. So, the children's wear T-shirt, which had fungirls.com on it as a cute motif. This is back in the early noughties, so quite novelty. Only it turned out that it was, in fact, a real website and very adult content.
Oh no!
Oh God, that is just cringe, isn't it? Again, like, can you imagine that in a
lawsuit
sign-off
ready to happen?
Yeah, in a sign. I mean, who signed that off?
Yeah, but I guess if you're thinking early noughties, we're not used to having lots and lots of different websites, and it's like everything was cute, and it's just like, you know. I'd be Katie.com. Like, do you know what I mean? You put .com on anything, not actually realising that, like, oh God, in the future that could actually be an actual website.
Yeah,
and, true. I wonder where Fungirls is going to take us to.
Oh God, so cringe.
Talking about lawsuits though, this is another one. Like, this is why a tech team is so important. Like, we'll have to get someone in from that and all the things that they face, because sometimes that can be really frustrating to have a tech team because they stop you from doing things that you want.
Yeah. So they're responsible for making sure products are safe and legal and don't fall apart when you got these great ideas on a PowerPoint and you send them out to a factory and then something comes back and it's just not functional. So they can be our friends and our enemy. The fun police, I sometimes call them.
The fun police, yes. But also some things that are sensible. The coconut candle, which was the Home Department's absolute bestseller, you're onto a winner, until the tech team got a call from customer services that they'd started reigniting.
Oh,
randomly reigniting and causing fires in people's houses.
Reigniting?
How terrifying. You think you've blown it out? A bit like those birthday candles that
relight
when you keep blowing them and then they just kept relighting. Yeah. But causing fires in people's home, I mean, like, that's serious.
That's serious,
that's taken a dark turn, that one.
Yeah, that definitely.
Let's move on.
Yeah. Okay. What have I got here? We had to cancel an order already in production because someone pointed out where Spider-Man's hand was on a pair of pants, making it look like he was
doing something,
pleasuring himself.
Naughty. Not something that he should really be sharing in public, shall we say?
Oh my gosh. The things you have to really think about.
Okay, moving on. Okay, next one. I remember designing this beautiful cocktail ring. In my mind, it was diamonds and semi-precious stones, but some came back so gaudy with plastic stones and looked so cheap.
Oh, God.
Obviously, I hadn't learned at that point about realistic design briefs and designing into a cost price. The supplier made those adjustments for me.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. That actually reminds me, I think when you first start out taking on a small range and doing your product development and being like taught by your buyer what to put in your briefing pack, it makes such a difference when you then go on your first trip and you go out there and you see how they interpret it from the other side.
Yeah.
And then it's like your life changes overnight when you get back because you know exactly what's there, you know exactly how they're interpreting it, and you can be so much more specific.
You know what their capabilities are, don't you?
Definitely.
So you know what their capabilities are, so it's really good to get to know your supply base in that way. But also, I think as much as sometimes you can get really torn, can't you? Because as a buyer, sometimes and design it, you want to design the most beautiful thing ever, but you have to think commercially.
Yeah.
So as much as you might not want to put a target price on your design brief, sometimes it actually helps.
Yeah.
Because you're a bit more realistic about what you're going to get back.
Yeah, I think that's always key once you know your supply base. I think when you're starting off with a new supplier, you definitely don't want to be giving them a target price because you don't know enough about them. You haven't spent time with them. You haven't gone to the factories. You haven't seen where they're buying their materials from, etc., etc. But definitely, when you're with your more established supply base, it's a partnership, isn't it?
You can be a bit more specific about it.
You know what they can achieve. You know what you need, and it's a bonding process, and that's why it's so important to get out there and spend some time with them.
Yeah.
Right, what do I have here? Shoes are always a disappointing sample as they only ever do one shoe, and it's always a size 4. I mean, it makes sense for sampling costs, but it was a sad day when I realised that working on the footwear department wouldn't mean lots of lovely sample sale shoes. Very different to jewellery when you could sample tons. Oh my gosh, that's so true, isn't it? That is so true. I remember when I worked for a retailer that had a footwear department, and they actually would sample 2 shoes, but it would always be not in my size. And when you swap samples around the departments, so I'm like, I've got a whole load of jewellery, you've got some shoes and some scarves, let's swap.
You thought you could have a whole outfit built.
Absolutely, but no.
Well, at least there were 2 shoes.
Actually, I tell you,
this was just hopping around on one.
I know. But to be honest with you, I did try to squeeze my feet into them. I was just like, nope, 3 shoes. You don't have much money at that point. Right. You're like living in London, I will wear a size 4 when I'm a size 5.5.
I will cramp my feet up. I will be in pain for the rest of my life. But it's funny because it's like, yes, on the one hand, like if you think about the sustainability impact of that as well. On the one hand, yes, it's cheaper to just sample 1, and especially if you're sampling a few, and you think, because you have to think about your hit rate as well, in terms of like the proportion of number
of samples,
this number of samples that you're going to be.
Yeah, if
creating
you sample
versus,
the world, they're putting that back in your cost price.
Yeah.
100%.
So you kind of have to think about, okay, well, if I sample 10, I need to be placing at least 7 of them. I need to be feeling pretty confident. But yeah, with jewellery, because it is that lower cost, you don't need to worry about it. But the sustainability bit of like, at least when you do it in a pair, they can have some life afterwards.
Exactly.
Just one odd shoe, that's just going to landfill.
Yeah, exactly.
Swings and roundabouts. Okay, final one.
I'm quite liking these, though.
They are quite fun, aren't they? The gold bikini that I sampled expecting a gorgeous sea folly or Heidi Klum style that was just a really ugly, dirty banana yellow. It didn't have a chance. You couldn't even put a swatch on it and try and imagine it better. It was an eyesore.
Oh, no.
I quite like a fresh yellow bikini.
Yeah.
Although, I once bought a yellow bikini and then I read, sharks are attracted to yellow.
Are they?
Let this be your warning.
Oh, you wouldn't want to put that on the packaging, would you?
No. And you wouldn't want to wear it in the sea.
Yeah.
Yellow bikinis are for poolside or just like beach bathing.
Yeah.
Only.
Noted. You heard that here first.
Right, so let's get back into this. So you're designing it from scratch. You're deciding how many SKUs.
Yes, you're deciding how many SKUs. You're thinking about pricing architecture. So you need to make sure you've got some good, better and best. So that's a low price point, mid price point and an exit price point. You do need to have a sort of fair bit of education on how much things cost. So I know that sounds very obvious, but when you're again first starting out, you need to kind of understand what is the premium materials and what is the low cost materials, and how can I achieve this?
Yeah, range? So you kind of work with the designer, don't you, to kind of get the like concept down. I think we've also likened it before to like working with an architect.
Yeah.
But then once it's all down on paper, like it's a buyer's job to work out which of their suppliers is going to produce it, and exactly as you say, like how are you going to do it? How are you going to make it in the most cost effective and sustainable way?
Yeah, exactly. And then, that's when your sampling happens, as we've said, and you get all your samples in, and then it's over to the buyer to really start to build out this range and work out what their biggest buyers are going to be, what are they going to be really backing, what makes most commercial sense, and then that's when the merchandisers step in and say no. I remember my favourite saying, one of my favourite merchandisers is, we'd be walking along in a showroom and we'd select something and he would famously say, no, move on.
That's not too bad a way of saying it, at least.
Yeah. No, but it's that kind of partnership relationship, isn't it? You know, they are the voice of reason, and you've come from it from a very different place. You've been working with a designer on it for 3 to 4 months. You understand why it's in the range, and they come in and sort of play the reality check of whether that's right for the range or not. But they are quite sensible, so you do have to have a bit of a, right, let me try and take you on the journey that I've been on and where I see this going, you know, so it's a balancing act.
It does take you from the highs of working with a designer and getting all like the kind of like, you know, sky's the limit, what could we do here, crazy, to then, you know, kind of crazy creative, to then like right back with a thud of, okay, but actually what's commercial? Yeah. Is anyone actually going to buy that?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a bit of a triangle, really, isn't it? A little love triangle.
Yeah,
like
I'd say so.
The design, buying and merchandising. And
yeah.
Or even you could look at it as a scales, I'd almost say. Like the buyers in the middle kind of holding it up.
Yeah.
So you're thinking you're the middle of the scales. And on one hand, you've got your designers.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you've got your merchandisers. Right? So you don't want to go too safe or too crazy.
Yeah.
You're the one trying to balance the two of them.
Yeah, totally.
And they, each of those roles, I say a triangle as well. So you're the scales balancing it, but it is a triangle because you're all equally as important.
100%. Yeah,
as each
absolutely.
Other. Like,
yeah.
As much as at the end of the day, the buyer will have it on their head if that merchandiser's bought too much stock, and that design print has not worked.
Yeah.
But that's partly because you are the middle of the scales, balancing them out.
But that's why I think it's quite important for everybody to be involved from the beginning. Like, as much as it's not the merchandiser's role to come up with the designs and things like that, but I always try and bring them on board, especially with smaller companies that I've worked with, try and bring them on board in the sense of showing them what I've been doing, rather than them suddenly getting to quite far down the road of the critical path and seeing something for the very first time. I think that's always really important, and especially when you're doing own brand, merchandisers also need to have that relationship with the suppliers too, because once the product's signed off and we're going into the purchasing stages, they then run with it, and then that's when their role really comes to life, and they need to have had that relationship with the supplier as much as you have from the beginning. They've got to have that at the end. So I think it is important to bring them on the journey, as much as they might sort of sit there in a design brief meeting and think, why the hell am I here? Why am I talking about like biophilic design? I don't give a shit about a plant on a building. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, some massive generalisation there. Some merchandisers are really into it, which is great.
Yeah,
but,
really, and really nice to have their opinion. Really nice to have everybody's opinion.
Yeah.
Because your customer isn't, opinion. You know, customers are quite broad in their sort of their thinking and stuff. And often you can find, again, we're generalising, but often you can find like merchandisers are very commercial themselves. You know, they won't necessarily be wearing that wacky print that designers come in wearing that looks so cool, but my God, I could never put it off.
Yeah.
They are more likely to be wearing something that's actually a very established trend. They're not maybe like at the forefront. And
not
I think
all of you guys, don't worry, we are not trying to put them in a box.
No. Being very broad. But it's also really important to have them sometimes at that beginning bit, because let's face it, we all want to move on a bestseller, right?
Yeah, you can't buy a black bag forever.
You can't. You have to move it on. And like, again, it's that balance. You've got the design team desperate to put into work their new creation, and you've got the merchandiser who, let's face it, often doesn't want to let go of that number one bestseller because it's selling safe. 10, 20, 100,000 a week. And then you got the buyer in the middle that's like, I totally get it.
Yeah.
This is a sure thing, but I can see it coming to the end of its life, and it is time to move it on. Like, and whether it's the shape or the style or the colour, like,
I think they talked about that in that Topshop documentary. I don't know if we've mentioned this before. I can't remember. But in the Topshop documentary, they were mentioning about They used to do that so well, didn't they, before?
Transitioning something. Like, they knew that it would only have a certain lifespan before you had to move it on.
And then they were really brave at coming out and then going on to the next thing. And I think that's why you've got so many amazing Topshop pieces now on Vinted that everybody's after, because they were brave. They were brave in their decision making, and they had that brand presence as well, didn't they? That people, what's the word? People were quite reliant on, or quite, they trusted. They trusted that they knew what they were talking about. And once you hit that sweet spot, I think that is a really important moment for a brand.
I think they really hit the nail on the head with being creative and offering something different, but it still felt very wearable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that was their sweet spot. We're going back to bestsellers and how you need to change it to be same, but different. You have to like work quite carefully with designers as well.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just touch on this quite quickly, but you do have to, when you're working with a design team, like, understandably they can be very attached to their beautiful artworks, and it can be quite tricky to make changes, can't it? Like, you have to be like quite gentle maybe sometimes with when you're asking for changes. Like, they are like really creative and they're challenging trends, but you need to make sure you're keeping that brand handwriting, and also you need to make sure that it is commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And colour, that is such a sensitive subject.
Oh, it is,
isn't it? Like, you can spend hours
debating
it, like the right tone or hue or shade. Like,
do you know what? I had a real moment the other day. My friend, he's just started a buying role somewhere, and he called me up and he was like, Lindsay, I'm really struggling. I've got all these colours and I don't know what to drop. Like, I'm really, really struggling with what, what is the right balance of colour. And we just talked it through calmly, but it was a nice moment for me to be like, oh, okay, yeah, no, this is my thought process on it. You need to have like 3 commercial colours, two trend, and then maybe a wild card.
I love a wild card.
Like that can be your press piece, that can be your press colour palette or whatever. But yeah, you're right, it can be quite a debate, and sometimes it's good to have that in the sign off, because it's good to get everybody in there. Everybody loves to have a little bit of an opinion in the sign off, don't they? And they
definitely.
And sometimes you like to just put some rogue things in there.
Is it the right colour?
Yeah.
Is it the right green, really? Like, it's green. This is our green bag. Yeah, but is it too evergreen? Should it be more bottle green, or maybe more of an emerald? But also, everybody's like translation of those colours can be really subjective too. Like, one person's bottle green is someone else's like evergreen. No?
Yeah. I remember having a debate over cobalt blue last year, actually. Some people thought, no, that's too bold. But guess what's everywhere these days, guys? Cobalt blue. Keep seeing it.
Right, to wrap this up, because that was a nice summary, I think, of it all. Having your own product range really helps you to sort of set you apart as a retailer, right?
Absolutely.
So you have a unique offering, you can create your own identity. It allows you to be clever with your pricing architecture. And it can really help you to be like identified as a market leader in certain categories too. Like, for example, M&S, like really known for their underwear. On the other hand, you often have to meet minimum order quantities. You're designing something completely from scratch. There's a fair amount of risk.
You've got to fill a container.
Compared to branded buying. So I guess a branded...
Let's dive into that.
Let's dive into it. A branded buyer buys brands. So in summary...
people are like, why are we listening to this podcast?
The definition of a branded buyer buys brands. So we're talking Colgate, Crayola, Cadbury's, Mulberry, like depending on which category you work with. And they are products that are already made, often can't be changed as much as you might like to.
Yes.
And often the buyers are product and numbers focused, so you're less likely to have a design team. Like when I joined a company to buy branded products straight off the back of my years working in own brand, I was
fish out of water. It is insane. But you're telling me I can't change the buckle, but I don't like the buckle.
Yeah. and also so shocked that there was no merch team. There was a supply chain team, which were very supportive with sort of a lot of the shipping bits, but there was no merchandiser. I was the merchandiser.
Yeah, and that put the fear of God into you.
Life without a merchie is very, very different.
Yeah.
I spent more time in spreadsheets after being sort of like only allowed to go in password protective with the authorization of with my merchandiser. I now had full control of the entire spreadsheet. I learned all of my formulas. Like, I think I just dabbled with a bit of a VLOOKUP before. Now I was summithing all over the place.
Pivot tabling, pivoting again.
Pivot.
That is the buzzword of this episode.
But I think you very quickly develop like new skills, like a strength in numbers, right? And you're more creative, I think, going back to like our very first point in terms of like finding solutions and ideas, rather than like the creative of like design and product development itself.
Yeah. I think the way that I took it on, so I joined a company that had both product development and branded buying. And the way I took it, the branded side on, to try and still keep that element of creativity, is work out, what do I want this department to be? So it's still thinking about what your concepts are, and how do certain brands fit into those concepts? So it's thinking about the customer journey. So the customer's coming into the store. What are they coming into your store for? What is the main mission for that customer? And how can I create sort of zones for them with the right brands to fulfill that mission that they've got coming in? So there's still an element of creativity there. You're just not being creative with the actual physical product. And there's some absolutely bloody amazing brands out there, isn't there? You know,
and you can feel so inspired, but in a very different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have a different relationship with those suppliers too, don't you? Like, you're more kind of like aligning your vision for the brand growth.
Yeah.
And sort of supporting by building both your brands together. And you know, you've got negotiating your sort of your vendor buying agreements. It's a real kind of like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, which I'm not saying there isn't in product development buying.
No, not at all.
Although I'd say there wasn't. I think it used to be definitely quite like, I need X.
Yeah.
And I need it now.
Yeah.
Whereas I think there's a lot more partnerships being built. And I think particularly with things like seeing how factories have been treated.
Yeah.
And some of the documentaries that have come out with some of the fashion retailers.
Yeah.
I think it's not acceptable, and I don't think it was okay. It was acceptable. It wasn't
seen.
Yeah, and it was the done thing. You would just ring up your supplier in China and India and be like, I need X, and if you don't do X, then I'm not working with you. Like, you'd be a lot more cutthroat. Whereas with branded buyers, like, you're both often quite, or can be quite big organisations.
Yeah.
And actually, you both have things that you both want.
Yeah.
And you can't necessarily get that same thing from somewhere else because it's that brand.
Yeah.
You know, like, if I want Lego, I want Lego. Like, I could just go to another, like, plastic brick company.
Yeah.
But my customer's searching Lego.
Yeah, exactly.
So I need to make sure that it's going to work for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes brands have the monopoly, don't they? Depending on what company you're working for. If you're working for quite a small company, the brands have the monopoly whether they actually want to be in your store. So I think when I came from quite a big retailer to a small retailer, that was quite hard for me to understand. So
when you're used to being able
on the door, going, "Oh, would you like to come in for a meeting?" "Oh, no, we don't want to arrange with you. Sorry."
Yeah. What? Yeah. And you're used to being inundated, and you're not expecting someone to not want to sit in your store.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a real learning curve for me.
And there can be some really tricky relationships sometimes to maintain, can't they? Like, I definitely know some branded buyers have found it an absolute nightmare trying to like manage their space.
Yeah.
Particularly if particularly like a department store. You know, who doesn't want to sit next to who? You know, they kind of like put it in their sort of like their terms. You know, like, you want to make sure that your similar brands are close because that's what the customer wants and that's how they're going to shop it. You know, you want whistles sitting near cos. You know your customer demographic shares similarities. You know, it's about creating and managing that brand landscape. But then you've got suppliers like that don't want to sit next to. They don't want to sit too close to their competitor, and you're really having to like manage that.
It's like plotting family at a wedding on a seating plan that might have fallen out with each other. Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah, exactly that.
You're playing like a
forever playing the wedding seating game.
Yeah,
which I always thought before I got married was going to be one of the most fun tasks, and then it was just like, this is so stressful. Trying to manage space planning.
Yes.
You know, I only have 5 seats on there and I mean 6.
All of these skills are very relatable in everyday life.
Yeah. When you ever wonder if like your skill set is like transferable.
Yeah.
But I could never work in anything else. You could.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got
we should definitely do an episode on that. What's the transferable skills? Yeah,
definitely.
I like that.
And I think a couple of really, really good points about a brand working with branded suppliers is like they'll often rack up your range for your meeting.
Oh my gosh.
You're not there colouring in, as we've said before. Like,
yeah. Again, when I moved from a product development to a branded retailer, that was the thing that I noticed the most. I was like, oh my God, they're actually going to come in and put this on a shelf for me and bring the pause and make it look nice. Wow.
God, weight off. I guess one of the things to say about branded products, though, is you can get it in multiple retailers. Mm-hmm. That sometimes can be a good thing, though.
Yeah, because it shows that you've managed to get that brand in your store, and you've got credibility,
got brand recognition.
Yeah, I think the only thing that could be quite a good move with that is to see if you can get some exclusivity on products that that can only be ranged in your store, but you've still got that brand.
Yeah, particularly if it's like a high-end brand, like you don't want that to be in supermarkets. So it can be really key to get some of that, or not even exclusivity just for you, but just to understand when you're buying it, like where else are those products situated. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But it is good to have trusted names, like mm-hmm. especially when you're like launching a new category. Like think about Primark when they first went into beauty. Like if they hadn't had like Vaseline and Carmex, like giving you that consumer,
anchor brands,
and that confidence that like they're trusted names. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like would you have then
bought
trusted all
brand,
of So it's a really good way to like go in that way. But as you say, like about products being elsewhere and making sure that you know where they are, like you need to be aware of what's going on mm-hmm. with like your competitors. And I think we'll go into that in like that. It deserves a whole episode itself.
Absolutely.
But if you are running the same line as someone else, like you have got to keep an eye on pricing. Like many retailers got programs or even like whole teams and departments that like track those for you. But like you need to know like if they're discounting, like when are they discounting? Like can you discount to like match them?
Have you got enough margin to do that? Can they support with that because someone else is doing it?
Or can you be clever with your pricing? Like mm-hmm. Can you have bundles like combined at a lower cost so you don't have to discount as heavily, but you still have an appealing offer for the customer? And I think we ended on the other one just talking about how it's so exciting to build a range from scratch, but you have so much responsibility because you've got to place really big orders. You can be a lot more kind of like flexible with your stock here, can't you? Like you can
absolutely. And some products have already been tested and trialed in the market, and you can get that data from your brand. Whereas when you're buying a new knicker range, I don't know why knicker range came to my head, you've never done that range before, so you've got to take some real punts on those black frilly knickers, and whereas this brand has already been selling black frilly knickers for 15 years and they've got all this history, so merchandisers got some good data to go on there.
They can support it. And then if you don't want those black knickers, why would you not want those black knickers? But you could always if you find yourself in tricky waters and for some reason black knickers sell everywhere else but your customer doesn't want a pair of black knickers, you could always like discuss with them about sort of stock management, like mm-hmm. Is there something, can you take that back and try something else, swap some stock around. Obviously that can like be dependent on the logistics and actually how is your whole retail system set up and how are you going to get that stock back to the retailer, but you at least have that option, right?
It's all a load of different negotiation styles and coming up with, like you said before, problem solving. It's all about problem solving and trading and reacting and so important to build amazing relationships with your brands and having that partnership. I think that is so key, having that partnership. We very much wanted to do this podcast to talk about building that respect level in the industry and not being so pushy and so aggressive. Like, you know, the world is changing so much, and the world of retail has changed so much. So,
and let's continue to change it.
Yeah, let's have those positive relationships.
So I think to wrap that up, both types of buying have their pros and cons. If you're looking to get into buying, it's really good to be aware of your strengths and sort of the type of buying that either the retailer or department that you're joining is focused on, so that you can make sure that you're joining business that you're happy with and plays to your strengths. But yeah, that's a lot of info to take in, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So what are our top 3 strengths that we think that you need to be successful in these types of buying roles?
Number 1, a creative approach to range architecture and price engineering for product development. Number 2, have a collaborative mindset with your designer, merchandiser and brands. And number 3, it's great to be an all-rounder, a creative who understands numbers.
Well, thank you so much for listening. Next week, we're going to be talking about the big one, trading.
Bye.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed listening to this episode, please, please, please like and subscribe and leave a review.
And if you already have, thank you, thank you, thank you. We all need a bit of retail therapy, and this is the perfect time for you to offload about that super cringeworthy story. We would love to hear from you all, your funny stories and experiences, or even any dilemmas. And maybe we can help, or at least find someone who can. And don't worry, we will keep these anonymous and remove any names and brands.
We would also love to hear from you on any topics you would like us to talk about. Please send all of these into buyingandbeyond@gmail.com or drop us a DM via our Instagram page @buyingandbeyond. Kate, are you a drama queen?
No, but I do like to exaggerate a little. Are you?
Drama just makes things interesting.
That's true.
All these thoughts and opinions are our own and based on our own experiences working for a wide variety of retailers. These are all in the hope to entertain and educate, and not to reflect negatively on any place we currently or have previously worked.